Hey everyone, welcome to Pages and Pours. My name is Robert, and tonight I'm doing a video to do my August bottle kill post-mortem, but also show you the bottles that I purchased in August, most of which I purchased just in the last couple of days on my trip to the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. And I was doing so well in August. As some of you know, I've been trying to reduce the total number of bottles that I have at home because I have too many. I'm running out of storage. I've overrun my overflow storage. And so I was reducing a couple of bottles every month that I'm just not going to buy again, and trying to get my numbers down. And I was doing so well, and you'll see how I got derailed in a few minutes. So I'm going to go through. I killed off 9 bottles in the month of August. Some were, almost empty as it was, and I'll talk through them and show you which ones I would consider buying again, which ones I won't buy again. And these are in no order whatsoever. So this one is the Benriach Smoky 10. It's a Speyside Scotch, but it's a peated Scotch. And I liked it okay, but I didn't like it enough to put it back in my cabinet again the next time. I wouldn't mind trying one of Benriach's Straight Line, the regular Speyside without the peat, and see how I feel about them, because they're supposed to be really good. Apparently, I'm not sure if it's Benriach or Benromach that has a cask strength, but I haven't seen it. I've just heard about it. But this is one I probably won't buy again. The Old Forester 1910 bourbon. This is part of the Whiskey Row series. I really like the 1910 and the 1920 Prohibition style. The 1910 is a double oak style. They call it Old Fine Whiskey, but it's actually put into 2 different barrels. And I do like the 1910 and 1920 enough that I will buy them again. I just haven't gotten around to buying them since. This is the Jameson Black Barrel Irish Whiskey. I like it a little bit better than the basic Jameson by putting it in that extra charred barrel. It's got a few extra notes that I like in there, but it's still just 40% ABV, and it's a little weak for me. And this is probably a failing of my palate more than anything else, but so much of Irish whiskey tastes exactly the same until you start getting into the higher proof ones. And so I'm trying to eliminate the 40%ers out of my cabinet and focus on getting some of the higher proof ones in, so I can distinguish some of those more complex and robust flavors. This is Redwood Empire Pipe Dream, which is their bourbon. It is 45% ABV. It's very inexpensive. It's only $40. So for me right now, this is a maybe. I was thinking it was 40% ABV, but when I finished off the bottle, I noticed that it actually is 45%, and I enjoyed it quite a bit this last little pour. So I would consider buying this one again, but I'm not in a huge hurry to. This is the Eagle Rare 10-year, one of those hard to find bottles from Buffalo Trace Distillery, and this was the very first bottle of Eagle Rare I had ever bought, and I paid too much for it. I bought it online and probably overpaid for it, and I like it. It's another one that is, I think, 90%. Yeah, it's 45% ABV, 90%, very easy to drink, very enjoyable, classic bourbon notes, and I would buy another one of these. In fact, I already have. But I will only buy these in the future if I can get them at or close to MSRP. I'm not going to pay over the normal price for Eagle Rare. There are just too many other options out there. This one is the Evan Williams Bottled in Bond. It's very, very inexpensive. This is an under $30 bottle. It's nice at 100 proof. This would be really good for mixing in cocktails. I don't absolutely love this flavor profile for just sipping neat, and so I probably won't buy this again because I don't make cocktails. So this is one I'd probably skip, but if I were going to make cocktails, this is certainly one I would probably keep in my bar. This is Maker's Mark. It's a private selection. Maker's Mark has what other people call store picks, but groups can go to Maker's Mark and choose the specific sets of 10 staves that they put in this for the extra 9 weeks of finishing. And this one is the Dura Bull 7 bottle that I picked up at a local store. Loved it, but I've got several other similar private selections from Maker's Mark, so I don't really need to replace it. I've still got some other ones with slightly different stave profiles, but I absolutely enjoyed this one tremendously. These are a little bit more expensive than I wish they were. I think they're around $70, $75. If they were $60, I'd like them a whole lot more, but I'm always going to have at least one of these private selections in my cabinet. This is a Scotch. It's the Aberlour 12-year-old. It is a Speyside. This one's double cask matured, so American oak casks, bourbon casks, and sherry oak casks. And I like this one just fine, but again, it's a 40%er. So what I would rather replace this with is one of their cask strength offerings, and I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. And then the last bottle I finished is the Whistle Pig Piggyback 100 proof bourbon whiskey, aged 6 years. I got into Whistle Pig and Piggyback through their 6-year-old rye, and when the bourbon was released a year or two ago, I thought I'd try it. I don't love it. I like the rye better, and so I have another bottle of this that's already open and I'm currently sipping on. When I finish it, I probably will not get this one again because it's almost $50. Some places it is $50, and for that price point, there are a lot of other bourbons that I prefer. So this is one I probably would skip. It's fine. It just doesn't really stand out above anything else at that price point. So these are the ones I finished. Such a great job. Wait till I show you what I did. So let me stop for a second. I'll take these off the desk and then I'll walk you through all the bottles that I brought home this month. Be right back. Okay, for most of the month of August, I was being an angel. I only bought 2 bottles in August, up until the last 3 days of the month, and then I went nuts. So I'm going to take you through them in the order I got them. This first one is technically a July purchase, and I counted it on my July purchases, but I picked it up when I went up to Kentucky this last week. This is my very first bottle of Stag Bourbon, a Buffalo Trace product. It is a semi-unicorn. You can find Stag, and I found lots of it when I was in Kentucky, but most places there are asking $300 or $400 for this bottle. North Carolina sells this bottle, if you can find it, for $50. I happened to get this one at a Total Wine in Lexington, Kentucky for just $58, which is like winning the lottery. So this is my very first Stag. I've had a sample of Stag sent to me by a colleague out in Oregon, and it happened to be from this batch. This is batch 18, which is the first batch where they dropped the Stag Junior name, and it's just called Stag now. So this one technically counted last month, but since I just picked it up, I wanted to show it to you. Now, considering I got this in Kentucky, this of course is a Scotch, and this is another one from that Total Wine in Lexington. My friend who lives in Lexington picked both of these up for me on different occasions. This is a backup bottle for my Springbank that is now open. Springbank, as you may know, is really hard to find, and it's getting more and more expensive. This now cracked the $100 a bottle mark, and it's getting to the point where I hesitate before buying another one. But this one I got. This was my first purchase in August. My second purchase in August is a Trail's End 10-year straight bourbon whiskey finished in Oregon oak casks, and it is cask strength. This is a single barrel hand selected by the folks at the Bourbon Van, Phil and Julie, and I believe it's their first barrel pick, and it's the first, I think it may be the first Trail's End cask strength release that they've done. And so I picked that up, and that was it. That's all I had bought for August, and I was doing so well because, as you saw, I emptied 9, so I was ahead by 7. And then the last week hit, and I just kind of lost all sense of trying to lower my number of bottles. This is what I got on my Kentucky Bourbon Trail excursion. The first stop was the Buffalo Trace Distillery, and I picked up a bottle of the Eagle Rare 10 to replace the one that I just emptied. Buffalo Trace every day they release one of their allocated bottlings. It's either Eagle Rare, Weller Special Reserve, which is their lowest cost of the four, or a Colonel E.H. Taylor small batch, or a Blanton's single barrel. And you don't know what they're gonna release until that morning. They don't tell anybody. There's some websites that are pretty good at predicting what it's likely to be, but there's no set pattern to their releases. It's whatever they get from their distributor. It's a really weird system where they actually have to ship it to a distributor, and then the gift shop has to buy it back from the distributor so they can sell it as a gift shop and not as a bar or a liquor store. But anyway, when you get it from the distillery, it's a good price. This only cost me $40. And so this was the bottle that was available on the day that I went. I was semi-hoping for a Blanton's. I've had a sample of Blanton's. It's good. It's not world beating, but everybody wants one. I wanted one. And I just happened to time it perfectly wrong. The day I drove to Kentucky, it was a Blanton's day. The day I drove home from Kentucky was a Blanton's day. And so I was there on the 2 days in between. It was an Eagle Rare day when I visited, and the next day was a Weller Special Reserve, which I don't mind missing out on. So I did get an Eagle Rare, and I only paid $40 for it, and I'm willing to pay $40 for it. I think it's worth that. It's not worth $100, which is what some people are charging for this bottle. So anyway, that was my first purchase at the distillery. Now, I did pick up a bottle of their bourbon cream liqueur, which is not a whiskey. It's like Bailey's Irish Cream. I wasn't expecting to, but when they did the tasting at the end of our tour, they included some of the bourbon cream, and I tasted it, and it's just gorgeous and sweet. But then they had us keep some in our little taster glass and pour some of their local root beer on top of it and make a little float. And that was the best thing I had had the whole week. And so I had to pick up a bottle of it. It was very inexpensive. I think it was under $20. But that was the only whiskey I bought from Eagle Rare. I could have gotten a bunch of the Buffalo Trace bottles, or I could have gotten two, but I already have plenty of that at home. I could also have gotten some of the Sazerac rye, but that's not really one of the ryes that I love. So I didn't pick any of those up. I did, however, replace my Eagle Rare. And I'll continue to do that when I go back to Kentucky. If I need another Eagle Rare, I'll go back to the Buffalo Trace Distillery and try to get one there for the $40. Okay, the next thing we did after we went to Buffalo Trace is we went to a couple of liquor stores that I was told that I had to visit in Bardstown. The first one is called Toddy's, world famous Toddy's Liquor. It looks like a small package store, and it is, but it reminded me, I mentioned this in my video over the weekend, it reminded me of a used bookstore that just crammed to the gills with stuff. And he has some cool stuff in there. Some of it is museum priced and you could never buy it at that price. But he had what he's famous for is he gets a lot of good store picks, kind of like this Trail's End is a barrel pick. And I found some of those. So I got a Russell's Reserve Private Barrel Selection, single barrel. That's a Toddy's Liquor pick. I have one that I bought straight off the shelf, but this is the first store pick I've got. And then I also got my first Knob Creek single barrel 120 proof, which was also a store pick from Toddy's. And while I was there, because I had bought two of his store picks, and I think this was $64, this was 80 something. So both are just a couple of dollars more than the ones you're going to find on the shelf, but presumably, and I got a taste of both of these in the store, and they were both fabulous. And so presumably those single barrels are a little bit better. But because I bought two of their store picks, there was something they had there that was marked up too high, and I tried to negotiate, and they gave me a little bit of a discount, but not nearly as much as I probably should have asked for. But I have never in the wild seen a Weller. I've seen 100 reviews of Weller bourbon. This is another Buffalo Trace product that's impossible to find. I mentioned the Weller Special Reserve, which is a $30 bottle that you can get at the distillery, and it's okay. It's a very basic bourbon. This one, the Antique 107, which is 107 proof, and the Weller Full Proof are the ones that most people suggest actually spending your money on. And so I got them to give me a discount on this, but I still spent too much on it. This is the one bottle on this trip that I overpaid for. Probably won't do it again, but if I fall in love with this, at least I'll know if it's worth hunting anymore. Okay, so that was the morning and early afternoon of, oh, one more. We went to another store right after Toddy's. We just went to a local liquor store called Keystone Liquors, and they had a Joseph Magnus, just their straight bourbon, which is triple cask finished. I had a sample, the same time I got my sample of the Stag, the same guy sent me a sample of the Joseph Magnus cigar blend, which is like life-changing, just wonderful, but impossible to find. This is their regular bourbon, and it's getting very expensive too. I think in North Carolina, this is over $100 now, but they had it for some $15 or $18 cheaper at this store in Kentucky, so I picked up a bottle of that too. And then that afternoon, just by chance, we decided we'll run over to the Woodford Reserve Distillery. I'm going to move these. If they shift out of the picture, I apologize. I can't see what's on the screen, but I'm going to move these over. So we went to Woodford Reserve, and we didn't have time to do a tour, and we didn't have time to do a tasting, but I have most of the Woodford Reserve bourbons already in the house. But what I bought is the Woodford Reserve straight rye whiskey, and I bought the Woodford Reserve straight malt whiskey, neither of which I have tried before. And so I picked those up in the afternoon. Both of those were, I think, $38, $39 a piece, something like that. And that was it for day one. For day two, I didn't go to nearly as many, I didn't go to any stores. I went to 2 distilleries on day two for a total of 3 bottles. The first one we did a tour of, we did a tasting tour at Four Roses Distillery. And I have the Four Roses small batch and the Four Roses single barrel already at home. But I didn't have the Four Roses small batch select, which is a step up in proof and flavor from the regular small batch. This one is non-chill filtered, so it keeps all those extra flavors in there. And so I picked up a bottle of that, and I think it's somewhere 50s, 60s, I forget exactly what the price is. It's pretty much the retail price. And they had just received a shipment of their single barrel strengths. They get these periodically at the store. Now, when you get a Four Roses single barrel, those are all the same exact recipe. Four Roses has 10 different recipes, but all the Four Roses single barrels are the same recipe. I think it's the OBSV recipe. But their private selections, each one of these can be a different one of their 10 recipes. This one happens to be the OBSF. The B stands for their mash bill. And so this is the mash bill with 35% rye instead of 20% rye. So it's a higher rye mash bill. And it's got the F yeast strain, which is known for floral notes. So I picked up a bottle of this because I never see this in the store here. And that's right under $100. These are a little expensive. And the cask strength on that is 55.8% ABV. Now, the crowning glory of this trip, which I was not expecting to buy at all, was the last bottle I bought in Kentucky. We went to Wild Turkey, but Wild Turkey's visitor center is under renovation, so we knew there were no tours available. But they have a pop-up gift shop, and we thought we would just pop in. I'd get a couple of glasses and look around, and they happened to have this bottle there, which I was not expecting to see. And that is the Master's Keep, last year's Master's Keep, which is the Unforgotten. This is a blend of both bourbon and rye. Let me show you the bottle. Comes in this fancy box. And the lady, when I picked it up, she said, "Don't lose the box. It's worth as much as the bottle." I don't think she meant it's worth as much as the whiskey, but it probably is worth as much as the bottle. I usually don't keep my boxes, but I'll keep this one for a while anyway. And so I picked that up. I had seen it the day before at one of these stores that I visited in Frankfort, Kentucky, for $700 or $800. The distillery was selling it for $200, which is the list price. So I thought it's the only time I'm ever going to see one at that price. And so I splurged and I bought this. Everybody raves about this one. No one's a real fan of the new one from this year. So I'm glad they still had the one from last year. And so that was my final bourbon. purchase. It says, this is a magnificent marriage of 13-year-old bourbon and 8 and 9-year-old rye, finished for a secondary maturation period in rye casks. Caramel, fruit, sweet oak, then transitioning to notes of black pepper and warm baking spices on the finish. It's 105 proof. And so I picked that up. That was my last one on the trip. And then I got home and realized I had forgotten about a Scotch order I had placed online that I was hoping wouldn't come until September, so I didn't have to count it on August. But it showed up at my house on the 31st, so I'm going to count it on August. I bought 3 bottles of Scotch, one of which I mentioned a few minutes ago. Replacing the Aberlour 12, I got the Aberlour Abuna Alba. They have 2 cask strength editions. The straight Abuna is a sherried whiskey. This is a bourbon matured whiskey at cask strength. It's 62% alcohol by volume. And so I found that one at a reasonable price online. I ordered that one. In last month's video, I mentioned to you I finished my Laphroaig 10, and I was holding off replacing it until I could find a Laphroaig 10 cask strength. And here it is. I ordered that one, and it's 56.5% alcohol by volume. And then this was my Scotch splurge. I am a huge Talisker fan, and I got the opportunity to try the Talisker 18 at Eric Gunderson's house when I visited him in Nashville. And I found a bottle of that at a little bit lower price than I've been seeing elsewhere, and I had to order it. This may be the only time I ever order this, and I'm going to milk this for all it's worth and see how long I can make it last. But I love Talisker, and the Talisker 18 was just a glorious taste when I had it at Eric's house, and so I ordered that. So there you have it. Someone needs to take my credit card away. I was hoping that I was reducing my number in August by 5 to 7 bottles. Instead, I've increased it by about 9 or 10. And so I am now officially back over the 200 bottle mark and need to start getting rid of some more bottles that I'm not going to replace. My only worry is that I have another trip planned in September up to Indiana, and I have to go through Lexington on my way there. And I am looking for a couple of very special bottles, and if I find one of them, I'm going to bring it home. And so I'm going to try my best not to hurt my numbers in September, but I'm probably going to be breaking even or maybe adding 1 or 2 more bottles in September that I find on this trip up to Indiana. Okay, if you've had any or all of these, let me know what your favorites were. I am embarrassed by how much I spent on one trip, but this is nothing compared to my very first trip to Chicago, so I'm getting better in my splurges. Although I'm buying fewer bottles, but I'm starting to buy more expensive bottles than I used to. So that's a worrying trend. But my cabinets runneth over. So it's time to start drinking the ones that are almost empty, getting them out of my cabinet, especially the ones that I'm not going to buy again, make room for these, and to slow my roll. That's the plan for September. I hear some of you laughing at me right now going, yeah, right, that's going to happen. So some of you are enablers. I'm just saying, you know who you are. But that's what I did. I'm looking forward to trying the ones here on this table that are brand new to me. I can't wait to try them. I probably won't open all of these for months because I go through kind of a rotation in all my bottles, so I don't just go back to my 3 or 4 favorites. But it's going to be a while. Anyway, that's what I got rid of in August. That's what I brought in August. So far in September, what is this, like the 3rd or 4th day of September, I purchased just 1 bottle. It was one I already had on order, and it finally showed up. But it wasn't that much money, and it's the only one I have ordered right now. I have a clean slate in September except for that 1 bottle. So let's see if I can keep it that way for at least 2 weeks. We'll see. All right, everybody. I'll talk to you again on Wednesday with a blind tasting from my sample pool, and on Friday with a reading video, my Friday Reads wrap up. Until then, cheers, everybody. Bye.